Hi, I'm Victor Gurr, musician and training lawyer. This is Paving the Wei, a podcast where I speak to people at the forefront of emerging technologies such as blockchain and AI. In this episode, I speak with Nikhil Rikhye, where we delve into the world of NFT wearables. Of course, nothing in this episode should be construed as professional advice of any kind. I hope you enjoy the show. GM everybody, welcome back to Paving the Wei. Thank you very much for joining us. Today I am joined by Nikhil Rikhye, who I met at an NFT UK event recently, and I have to say I was very impressed by. You run a setup known as Canvas, I believe, and you were telling me that you were developing wearables to coincide with, to sort of go with your NFTs. So I don't know if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself, and then we can get into what it is that you're working on.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. Yes, exactly right. I'm the founder and CEO of Canvas Design and Technology, and our mission is to bridge digital collectibles with the physical world. And we're doing that primarily through developing innovative wearable technologies. We think that basically the purview of NFTs can be expanded in terms of their utility and their market if we continue to build new things on top of the underlying platforms that we have been building over the last few years in the space. And so we just basically want to contribute to that in our sort of own way by bringing something new to the market, hopefully bringing a whole new set of eyes to the NFT space, and a whole new use case for really the assets that people already have in their wallets, and hopefully unlocking a bunch of new types of assets, new types of collectibles, and a bunch of new interesting creative things, a new creative platform that creative people can develop on, and hopefully build new things that we haven't thought of yet. So that's why we're called Canvas Design and Technology, because we just basically want to build these wearables as a canvas for other creative people to build cool things on top of. So that's basically what we're building at the moment. I can go into more details about the product and our vision, but from a general overview, in terms of our mission, that's what we're really devoted to.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly get into it. I'm interested to know what sort of inspired you to go the wearables route. I mean, NFTs, most of us are aware that, we view them on our browser. It has been difficult to, for example, if you're buying NFTs to show off your wealth, or just because you like being part of a community or whatever, and you want to show people, you can send them a link, for example, to the page on OpenSea or Blur or whatever. Or you may even have a gallery in the metaverse. So what made you think about getting into wearables?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So when I first started getting into NFTs in 2021, basically it was just word of mouth. My friend told me about this cool sort of art-based thing. I was still at uni, seemed really interesting, bought into the hype, was on Twitter, looked like an interesting community. But the one problem that I faced was, what can I actually do with the JPEG that I'm buying? And you mentioned a few different use cases. I guess like also PFPs are really, really common. Like that seems to be a designated place where you can put your NFT, as a profile picture. I wasn't sure about putting it as my sort of Instagram or Twitter profile, especially if you have a collection, that's only one specific place where you can put your NFT. But prior to being interested in NFTs, I was just interested in, fashion in general, just clothes. And it seemed back then kind of an obvious thing to do, as in what is fashion? What are brands really when you think about them? They are kind of just a community, a set of ideals and values that aligns with your own personal ideals and values, which you then decide, okay, that's something I want to wear on my body, or drive a car with that set of ideals and values. Each brand has a different sort of set of ideals and values. And what NFTs are just, a community with a set of ideals, values, run by a team. And I think really just expanding the use case into wearables seemed like a natural thing to do. But back then, that actual technology hadn't been built yet. And this was, 2021. How the mechanics of that was going to work was really in question. And then the thing that really made me take the leap into actually trying to develop something physically really was seeing the Humane AI pin. I watched a trailer about that like a few months ago when it had a bunch of hype behind it, a really good team from Apple. And what caught my eye was the form factor. The form factor behind that device is separate to the AI features and what the actual use cases and utility of the device are. It was a new form factor that we hadn't seen before, right? Essentially like a small device, like iPod Nano kind of sized, with a magnetic attachment at the back with a battery pack, which then you could clip on to, your lapel and because it's an AI like camera, lapel is the main thing that you're meant to use it for. But that form factor, which we haven't really seen before, seemed to be really applicable to a place where you would put some sort of digital collectible or asset, or really just because when you look at a T-shirt or if you're wearing a football jersey or anything like that, like the logo of the team seems to go like where your lapel is, right? And then like going back to what I said about brand, right? If you just can replace that with something that is aesthetically, unlocking the aesthetics of this unlimited digital screen, right? With videos and GIFs and, way beyond the purview of being able to, like what you can do with embroidering or anything like that. So aesthetically doing incredibly cool things. And then with this versatile new form factor, which you can apply to the lapel or to a cap or to a backpack, a bag, that sort of crystallized the view of like, oh, wow, this new form factor might actually work to solve the sort of problem and connect the two worlds, which I sort of thought of a couple of years before. And so that's basically what I'm working on now, is building out that pin, that same form factor of the pin, but with the sort of NFT functionality and built for that use case as opposed to the AI use case.
So just a quick explanation, the Humane AI pin, what exactly is that? What does it do? What function does it serve?
Yeah, the Humane AI pin is exactly, yeah. So it's an iPod Nano. That's why I like to say iPod Nano sized device. Mm-hmm. It has a camera on the front and a magnetic attachment at the back. So imagine you have a device with a camera that is looking at the world through a first person view, right? Similar to sort of like the Snap, I don't know if you've seen the Snapchat glasses where they have a camera like where your eyes would be. And because obviously since the AI boom, what you can do with that first person view, when you combine it with LLMs, hopefully it will unlock larger use cases for a sort of personal assistant who can, as you sort of move through the world, can see the world through essentially your own perspective and then can give you assistance based on that perspective. So you could be walking down the street and see some sort of flower or plant that you don't recognize. And instead of having to take your phone out and take a photo of it and put it through Google Lens or whatever, you could just put basically two fingers, touch the device and and basically ask it, oh, what is this? This is this plant, for example. Mm-hmm. And so that's the use case for the Humane AI pin. But what the form factor is, you can basically put it on your lapel, put it on your chest, on articles of clothing, so that it can get that first person perspective, look outwards from your sort of your own body, so to speak.
So you said that Canvas is looking to make a pin that works with NFTs. I'm getting the impression that, you've talked a lot about community already. We've spoken about how PFPs, profile pictures come into the NFT community, the scene. It's a way of, beyond just sort of showing wealth, it is a way of displaying to others that you are part of this particular community. Again, going back to your, football shirt analogy, you know that everybody that's wearing that shirt, although that it might have subtle differences like your own name on the back or whatever, you're all still part of the same club, the same church, as it were. And NFTs very much serves the same purpose. So, I mean, the impression I'm getting, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that the use case of this lapel, this pin that you're making to display the NFTs can tell people that you are part of this community. I assume, being that it's an NFT, it will be verified somehow on the device. And that's a way of connecting, of bringing people together that might not necessarily know that they're part of the same community until they bump into each other with these pins on.
Exactly. That's definitely key, is since basically the beginning of time, I feel like, or at least the beginning of civilization, community is what brings us together. And whether that's, and what you wear is such a sign of the communities that you're in. And on top of that, really, you also have the sort of self-expression piece, which is what you wear is also how you want to express yourself. And I think also because of the nature of clothes, and where if they're in the modern world, I think since the age of the internet, we've become, especially Gen Z, I feel like our own ability to express ourselves, because we're so diverse in terms of our interests, and since the internet has sort of unlocked all the knowledge of humanity, there's so many niche groups that exist. You see on TikTok, you can be super into trains or to X, Y, or Z. There's an infinite number of small niches that you can be interested in. And I think that with like clothing and merch, that basically constrains your ability to express that interest, because to basically create something in the physical world, you have to be thinking about, supply chain. I have to basically manufacture this item of clothing at scale. I have to make it like look good, but also have high quality, right? It also needs to be shipped on time and X, Y, or Z. There's so many additional considerations which constrains community leaders, creative people from being able to sort of connect with their audiences and distribute like wearable items, right? And so if we can build a platform, just a fundamental platform, which people in the world have, which allows creative people to sort of not have to think about any of those considerations and just think about, okay, this is the community that I'm building for, that I'm connecting with. And I'm just going to make something that looks incredibly cool, right? Using digital art or whatever you want to do, right? Like videos, pictures, right? And then focus on all these other use cases. Like, what do I actually do with the community? Do we have group chats? Do we have, right? Like, just focus purely on that and not have to consider any of these other constraints that make it really frustrating and annoying to sort of get your sort of community values and allow your community to sort of express those values out in the world. We can just like get rid of all of those considerations by building a platform, like a wearable platform that people can then build on. And I think that NFT technology will sort of disappear into the background in terms of that. It's just a new technology that allows us to build this use case, right? Yeah.
Okay, so going back to sort of supply chain issues and things like that. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to think about going to a concert, your favorite band, they've got the person on the merch table. They've had to, it's amazing. I mean, it's like me doing these for CT20, I did 4 t-shirts because I wanted 2 for me and 2 for Jim Rikhye, the rapper. And it cost us something like almost 50 quid partly because it was such a small batch. But it's custom and everything, and it's such a massive faff, and it's a great expense. And sort of, it sounds to me like you're trying to reduce that expense somewhat. At least, presumably because the NFT that you choose to display on the day can be changed tomorrow, given that it's a digital item. But of course, you are still dealing with a physical item. And one of the most interesting topics that we spoke about when we met at the NFT UK event was the hardware aspect of things. I've met software developers for days, and it's very rare for me to come across somebody who works in hardware. So I don't know if you want to speak to how sort of any of the challenges that come in terms of hardware, or in fact, is it actually not as challenging as perhaps I thought? When we're talking about supply chain, is it not quite as simple as we think, changing the NFT every day because it's just a digital item? But considering that actually we have to have a thing to display it on in the first place, what are the challenges in bringing this pin to the market?
Yeah, it's going to be very challenging. We know it's not going to be easy, but it's definitely doable. And that's the main thing, is whether something is hard or easy, I don't think is necessarily, I don't really mind. Like if something's difficult, that's okay. But as long as it's possible, and I definitely think it is possible what we're doing. And yeah, it'll take 12 to 18 months, and we're going to have to raise money and, expand the team and work with third-party developers in China. And yeah, there's going to be a bunch of challenges along the way to make great hardware. But we definitely believe that we can do it. We have the beginnings of a really solid team. So my co-founder, he has a background in electrical engineering, and I have a background in the sort of software blockchain side. And so we're still early on the journey in bringing the hardware to life, but there's going to be a bunch of challenges that we expect. But definitely doable. And I guess I'll come back to you once we actually got the pin in people's hands, and then I'll be able to tell you about the true trials and tribulations of everything that will go wrong in the next few months. But definitely it seems possible, and that's what sort of keeps us going. And what keeps us going is the vision. The vision is, imagine if it is super normal in the future that people have a sort of physical device that they use as a sort of fashion item. And if we can make that sort of crazy vision, something that seems so absurd right now, a possibility, that would be insanely cool. And so that's basically what keeps us going and pushing through any of the challenges that we sort of face.
That's really, do you know what, this was something else that got me when I was speaking to you at the event as well, was your passion about it. It was very clearly coming through. And like I said to you at the time, it was probably helped by the fact that Mr. Brightside was absolutely blaring behind you. It sort of gave it this sort of almost heroic nature, which was hilarious. But yeah, clearly there is a belief and a passion behind what you're saying. I of course, it does make me think, though. We have come across NFT wearables before, and I remember, because I'm a 2021 joiner like yourself, and one of the things that I can't remember if it was 21 or 22, but Tag Heuer had their connected watch, which was the big thing, because not only does it tell the time, but it also displays your NFT. And, there was a lot of, promotion around displaying your BAYC as a sort of, the fact that it's Tag Heuer as well, it sort of is a bragging right, really, especially when apes at that point were more expensive than they are. Not that they're cheap now, but they were very much not cheap then. So do you sort of, I'm not coming across many people that are saying, guess what? I've got my Tag Heuer and check out this NFT. Do you think we're still in early days yet? Do you think, well, I would say, do you think it's not going to take off? Obviously, you're going to say, yes, it is. That's a silly question. But I mean, can you see like a timescale for this? Yeah, I know sometimes things take a little while to sort of get in people's heads. Look at, Meta's Ray-Ban glasses, for example. That's been promoted and out there for quite a few years now, and only maybe really starting to take off with the latest AI boom. Where do you see this going? How long do you think it will take?
Yeah. So the Tag Heuer connected watch, the fact that that exists actually gives us a lot more confidence in the project, because what that sort of informs us or tells us is that, and from that project was led from the top down. It's one of Bernard Arnault's children is now heading up Tag Heuer. He was really into NFTs. And he basically saw that as a natural extension of NFTs, which is you bridge these digital collectibles with the physical world. That makes a lot of sense. That's why he did it. And yeah, if there's someone who's really deep in the industry, who has all of the industry insights, but also has a sort of more novel perspective in that he's younger, and he sees that this is a natural extension of what these assets can do, that means he has a very similar vision to ours. And he has obviously much more experience in that specific niche than I do. So that gives us so much more confidence that okay, somebody who's really smart and experienced thinks that there's something there. Then it comes to the question of why is it not massive right now? And I think there's a bunch of small reasons as to why the Tag Heuer thing didn't really kick off in the way that it could have if executed correctly. And hopefully we can overcome those challenges. So the first thing is that when you have a product from Tag Heuer, the idea of like the brand of Tag Heuer has a bunch of baggage, right? You expect of like a physical watch, right? They have to, even though it's somewhat of an advantage to have an existing brand, you can also view it as a challenge to overcome because there's baggage. People have assumptions about what the brand should be. And also that limits your ability to commit to the actual vision, right? Which is clearly, even though they thought that this was a good idea, it was like the third feature of the watch, right? It was like a passing by thing. They didn't really do the full Web3 marketing. And that sort of NFT first, this is the vision, this is the brand that we're going to build. I think that will put us in a better position to execute. And then also because we have that Tag Heuer, that the Connect E4 really saw the NFT thing as a feature. For us, it really is an entire vision of what NFTs can be, right? It's JPEGs and GIFs right now, but in the future, hopefully it will be this sort of these interoperable, truly owned digital assets, which you can take from the physical world, which is what we'll build, into a metaverse, into a game, right? And so there's a bunch of different reasons as to why we think we can do slightly different thing, but that same vision better than them. But the fact that they also have that vision gives us a bunch of confidence. And then in terms of the time scale and comparing it to other devices like the AI devices, the hardware for AI that's coming out right now, yeah, we know it's going to take ages. It's going to be years until this is super common. The question is, how do we get ourselves there? And I think what fundamentally differentiates us from or the product type that we're building as opposed to an AI device is we have less sort of technical risk in terms of the product. It's mostly just go-to-market risk, right? If you have AI glasses, what you're selling to the consumer is, oh, this device is going to have some sort of incremental improvement on your productivity, or it will offer you some sort of utility in your life, right? You're going to actually use these glasses and the assistant is going to help you. You're going to actually need to use this assistant. And that is really hard to do because we have iPhones, right? We have iPhones and they're really good. They do things very, very well. And most things can be an app. What's really difficult, what's difficult for us is we need some sort of social equilibrium in terms of making this thing cool, right? Making it normal. And that's the challenge. But it's separate to, this is going to like have so much utility in your life, or make you do X, Y, or Z 5% faster, or make you get knowledge X, Y, or Z like easier, right? So it's a whole different challenge, and it's going to take a while. But the first challenge is making the device, making it really, really good. And then the next challenge is reaching this sort of social equilibrium of getting people to think it's cool. And our plan to do that is hopefully partnering with NFT projects that have done this before, got something new and novel into the world and made it sort of socially cool. And then also, partnering with influencers and doing that sort of same playbook. But that's the challenge that we face. But it's a fundamentally different challenge to the sort of, we're making a technological breakthrough that's going to make the human race X% more efficient. So it's going to be, but it's not going to be quick. That's for sure. But if you're an early adopter, I think that the benefits of, which we'll be doing NFT projects and things along with that, there'll be benefits to seeing the vision in the long term and getting in early, I would say.
Could you sort of speculate on what those benefits may or may not be? Or
we have some interesting things in the roadmap in the next few months. Yeah, just we really want to reward the people who see the vision and stick with us and help us out early on. I don't want to give away too much, but some interesting things will be announced in the next few months for sure.
Sure. I'd say in that respect, are you at the point where you're looking at funding, or is this very much sort of off your own back at this stage?
Yeah, so we're looking to raise in the next few months. Right now, it's just about making sure that we have a really good team. That's the key. That's obviously going to be the key. And so right now, just looking at building that best team possible in sort of every area that needs to be solved as we've sort of gone through. And then we'll look to be raising some money in the next couple of months.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what have you got to show at this point? When you go to the investors in a couple of months, do you have a prototype at this point, or are you still very much sort of in the software stage? What does the pin look like at the moment?
Yeah. So right now we have sort of 3D models of what the pin would look like, and then it's the team, right? So building a team with experience in making products cool is one thing, and then technical expertise to build the product to the end, and then the vision of the product, what it can be, and so it'll be a pre-seed round, and those are basically the building blocks. And with investors, it's going to be people who believe in the vision, who understand the technology, and believe in us as a team to execute that. And
presumably the funding is needed to actually make the thing, as it were.
Exactly. Make the thing, bring it to market. And with hardware, there's a bunch of things that you can do in terms of, Kickstarters as well. But bringing the thing to market and making sure that it's not some sort of half-assed attempt, something that is really, really good, that can be the start of the snowball into the vision that we actually have, which is, it's normal for someone to have a device like this where they can express themselves using their digital assets, but in the physical world. And it's something that's actually normalized in society.
So in terms of, sticking with sort of let's say the basic use case of the pin is to display your NFT. There's been a lot of talk recently about, NFTs, they're dead now, aren't they? So, what's your response to that? Are they dead? Again, probably a silly question, bearing in mind your product, but, what do you see the future of PFP communities and NFTs at the moment?
Yeah, I would say maybe NFTs as you thought about them in 2021 might be dead, which is literally a JPEG, right? Literally a JPEG, and it's connected to some chain somehow, but you don't really know, or whatever. and you're not really that interested, or maybe you are, and that's the thing that gets you interested. And that is sort of going away. And the industry sort of realizes that you need to have utility, right? I think the initial thing about NFT is, which is so fun, separate to the community aspect, is trading is fun, right? Like the ability to place bets on things which you think have aesthetic value and community value, which you then like go up and down. That activity is fun. We like to do that, even in the physical world, right? With sort of luxury goods. If that's luxury sneakers, you're trading them on StockX and going to secondhand sort of like conventions and selling them. Or if that's even in Selfridges, they recently had a pop-up, which is like the stock exchange, where you could like come in and sell your secondhand goods. That is a really compelling idea in itself. And because of the way that Web3 is kind of played out is, we've been building out that infrastructure to be able to trade both like fungible and non-fungible tokens. And so we've had that wave of interest. But now we realize is that to sustain that interest over a long period of time with these assets is we need to build out like actual utility, something behind just purely a JPEG, because speculation is not enough for continued interest, because by its nature, if you're on to the next thing, you're on to the next hype cycle, you're on to the next. So how do you build out that utility? And the industry is doing it mainly through applications in gaming, which make a bunch of sense, right? You have these digital assets. Let's increase their utility by you being able to use, not have them just as a JPEG or whatever, but let's use them in a game or a metaverse and being able to like transfer them between those things. And then individual projects, the ones that seem to be having, staying power, like Pudgy Penguins, right? Let's have them as physical toys that you can buy in Walmart, or now even Bake, what apes have done 3D models of the actual apes. So NFTs, as we thought about them as this fad in 2021, may be dead. But really what an NFT is this fundamental base level technology, which is extremely new, extremely new. And now what we're doing is with this new technology, figuring out how do we actually use it in novel ways that bring utility to consumers. And so that's what I said. That's what I meant by what I said earlier about how maybe in the next iteration of NFTs, we don't even call them NFTs, or the fact that they are non-fungible tokens, quote unquote non-fungible tokens, disappears, because that doesn't matter. It's just about what is the use case that they enable. Just like no one really talks about the sort of protocols behind the web, right? You just put something in your browser and you turn up at the site, and you're not talking about the technology behind it because that's faded into the background. It's about what are the use cases. And so I think that we're still in extremely early days with NFTs, and I don't know who are going to be the winners and losers, which projects are going to be the winners and losers, and it's all to play out. But I fundamentally believe that the technology itself has utility if we can build on top of it, which is what we're trying to do at Canvas and what a bunch of other people who believe in the technology are trying to do as well. And yeah, and I think we have some really good builders in the space. So I'm pretty bullish on the next few years of NFTs, or whatever we're going to call them, or whatever they're going to be.
Yeah, I tweeted the other day, sorry, I should say posted, that I'm still a firm believer that the term NFT is not going to disappear. I mean, it's things like I still can't remember what the hell DNA stands for. So I can, funny that, you say about we don't talk about the protocols behind the web that we use. You're absolutely right. I can go onto my browser and I can do so many things without knowing what on earth is going on in the background, not even just on my computer, but what is going on in somebody else's computer to talk to mine, all this sort of stuff. There's just so much involved. And that's very much the case already for Web3, given that it is a web applications. But at this stage, we are still dealing with things like private keys, seed phrases. It's not like or at least in most cases, it's not like, for example, if we think of an analogy in a way, or a similar sort of, I can't think of the phrase at the moment, but if I want to use a service on the web, generally speaking, it requires me to sign up sort of almost as a proof of personhood-ish with my email address. And that gives me access to do the thing. In the world of Web3, if I want to do anything that means I can make use of this NFT or this particular blockchain service, it requires me to sign in or connect with my wallet, which is something that, I have to keep very safe. I have to keep that seed phrase very safe. So how do you see that kind of moving? People have talked about abstracting Web3 and so that people don't know that they're using it. But of course, there's a danger in that, because then their assets, are they really theirs? You've got a pin that is designed to show off somebody's, bought item. Can you see a future where we really are not, in fact, bothered about what's going on in the background in terms of Web3? Are we always going to have like an element of, oh, actually, yeah, I do have some idea of what's going on because that's very important? Or do you think, maybe we're moving perhaps towards custodial wallets and the like?
Yeah, I think this is really one of the key challenges that we have to solve as a community. And it is an incredibly difficult challenge to solve, because there is a fundamental tension between security and user experience. Because they're like, to have something be as secure as possible, you want to have as many sort of checks against bad actors, but to make something as user friendly and it's like perfect in terms of a user experience, you want to be as streamlined as possible. So they're literally on opposite ends of the spectrum. And what we need to figure out is, what is the balance between those two things? And I don't have an easy solution for that. It's very, very difficult to sort of figure out. But my guess is that for broader, more mass adoption, people prioritize security less than we think, or less than the Web3 community specifically thinks. And that's because the nature of the Web3 community is that it is more born out of people who are fundamentally interested in decentralization as an end in itself, and cryptography. But most people on the street don't care as much about that. That's my guess. So in terms of where we're at now and where we may be going, I think some abstraction and a focus on trying to improve and streamline the experience might be beneficial just from where we're starting at. But if that ends up as you mentioned, where we have no knowledge of what's happening in terms of the ownership side, and if that's the end that we go to, I'm not 100% sure. But the guess is that we're going to be somewhere in between, and I don't know where that middle ground is, but we have to try things out, because where we're at right now clearly isn't the perfect solution, and we'll never be at the perfect solution. So we just need to be incrementally improving. And I think people are doing that. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure where it'll end up, but we just need to be making strides in the right direction, I'd say.
Yeah, I have to say in that respect, actually, I very much agree. People don't care as much about security as they think they do or should. In fact, you're absolutely right. So tell me a little bit more about you then. How on earth did you manage to get to the stage where you are at now? You seem quite incredibly confident about this thing that you're designing. What put you on this path? Who are you?
Right. So before this, I was at a startup called FluidStack, building out as a founder's associate. I was there briefly building out the physical GPU infrastructure for a GPU cloud. And then before that, I just finished like a master's in computing at Imperial. And then yeah, before that have an undergrad in philosophy and politics. So a bunch of really random things. And I think
that is a bit random. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's really the thing is when I was doing philosophy and politics, I've always been really interested in technology. That was the thing that interested. I've always been interested, I guess, in trying to figure out things that are incredibly tough. And when I was at school, I was torn between either doing like going down the physics and maths route or the philosophy route. And I was initially like all my subjects were, physics, maths, and that science, like chemistry route. And then on like the first day of sort of A levels, I switched from A levels, like those were my A levels, to IB. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to do IB, I'm going to do philosophy, because in philosophy, like the questions that you're trying to answer, just like with physics, are sort of the most intellectually stimulating questions, right? Like what is the nature of consciousness? What is the best way for society to organize itself? Do we have free will, right? These almost semi-impossible questions are things that are just like interesting for me to tackle. And then I sort of did philosophy for a bit and then realized, okay, there's an approach and you can get this far and whatever. And then, I wanted to move on to the next thing. And sort of the next big thing in front of me was, or what seemed like an impossible thing was, okay, I have this philosophy background, but I've always been interested in technology, let's try and give that a go, right? And like see what that is. And then you go do it. And then you realize, okay, it's actually possible. You just have to like do the thing and, like learn how to code on the side. And once you sort of enter that space, the veil comes down very quickly. That's what I found. It's like, it seems like this impossible black hole, and then the veil disappears, or the mist of it, like the mythology of the thing disappears very quickly. And then, so I was doing software, and then it was the same thing with hardware, where like I'd been working on the side of my degree with my girlfriend on a project, which was basically a ready to drink matcha latte. So, like a physical product that in the world, like a food and beverage product, like matcha and oats and oat milk, like stirred up in a bottle. And I was helping with the supply chain for that. And that seemed way easier. Making that product seemed way easier than making a GPU cloud. But then you realize it's like fundamentally similar issues that you're dealing with, right? You have some sort of idea about what you want to make because it solves X, Y, or Z problem. And then how do you get there? Oh, you basically do a bunch of research, you speak to a bunch of people, and then you make some decisions based on the imperfect information that you've gathered. And then hopefully you meet your business requirements, and hopefully you're proven to be right in the future, right? And whether those requirements for the ready to drink matcha latte, the requirements from the factories will be, oh, does this factory have machines that pasteurize the milk at a certain temperature? And can they do it at X cost? And can they, like, what are their MOQs? And right. And, with a GPU cloud, it's like, oh, how tall is this building so that we can fit server racks in? And do they have the power infrastructure to fit in these GPUs? And you just make a spreadsheet and you speak to people and then you figure it out. So I think it's more of like everything is both hard and easy at the same time. But it's going to be hard and easy in ways that you don't expect. And so, like, for me, I just want to work on things that I find interesting. And yeah, and for me, the coolest thing would be to create some consumer hardware that takes off. And I know it's going to be insanely hard, but everything's kind of insanely hard and kind of easy at the same time. You just have to do it. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do now. And yeah, let's see where it ends up.
Well, it'll be, yeah, in that respect, actually, seeing where it ends up. I mean, you starting off with philosophy and politics, to be fair, I feel like, although the two very much coincide, philosophy by itself, like you say, they're almost semi-impossible questions to answer. And I would argue that perhaps they are impossible questions to answer. At the end of the day, everybody's going to have a different view about what this certain thing is. And to a very large extent, you'll never have any proof to back up whatever argument you come up with. It's the same as theology. It's, well, in my opinion, at least, so I should be careful about what I say. But, then to sort of come away from something that really, to my mind, has no end. People have been philosophizing since forever, I imagine, to then move into something which, again, to my mind, feels like it has more of a result. Perhaps if you're moving into software, you're moving into hardware, you can see the results of your work. Am I wrong there? Maybe there's always another challenge. Do you see?
Much more satisfying. It's way more satisfying. Way more satisfying, because I came to that same conclusion when I was studying philosophy, is that, well, every argument, what you're doing when you're sort of discussing something with someone, when most people discuss things with somebody else, they usually discuss things at a real surface level, and they have some tension at the surface level. And to really get behind the tension of whatever they're discussing is you basically just ask, why do you believe the thing that you believe? Why do I believe the thing that I believe? And then you can basically trace someone's sort of outer level beliefs, beliefs that may express themselves in how they act or some policy decision, let's say. And you can trace their beliefs back down, more abstractly, all the way down to some really core fundamental beliefs that can't be argued for, using reason, really, right? Like above those beliefs, you can say, oh, I believe this because if this is true and this is true and these two things are beliefs, then this must be true, right? There's some logic there, but there's always at least one or two core beliefs that people have just picked. For example, it could be an idea about what is justice or something like that, some abstract concept. And that may inform, what you think about some policy decision on, let's say, abortion or something like that. And people may be arguing about the idea of like, oh, should like the policy be X, Y, or Z? But really what the tension that people experience is in their conception of what this abstract concept of justice is. But no one really talks about that. And you can never get past that point. You kind of just pick it. And most people don't realize that. And that leads to extreme frustration. That's why I think there's so much tension in politics, because, in these 15-second sound bites that people need to get from like in the media, it's difficult to unpack these things. And so now moving from that sort of, okay, things seem to be much more subjective at the core level in philosophy, into something more objective in terms of there is an outcome. It's much more satisfying, because if you build the thing, it's there. But then at the same time, now I'm realizing again, is that there's the technical side of a startup, but then really at the same time, it's when you're trying to sell something that you're facing similar issues, which is like, that's not objective either, right? Like, can you convince someone that this is a good idea or whatever? That's a non-technical thing, which is still a massive challenge to figure out. And so like those two sides of the coin are going to exist in I think everything that anyone does, and in every single organization or venture. And they're both interesting and challenging and frustrating in their own sort of ways. And so, I think I'll hopefully be using both sides of that coin in terms of those skills in whatever the challenges that come up on this project will be.
It does make you consider whether marketing is one of the more sublime skills out there. I mean, certainly, in my experience, you can get so far with a product and think it's the best thing ever, but if nobody knows about it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the build it and they will come seems to be not true, right? From throughout history, it just, you have to get to market somehow in an effective way. Like the technology itself is, unless you're building something, which is why it can be easier and harder to build something that is, okay, where your value proposition is, we're just going to make this process X% more efficient. And that is value that you've created, like objectively, that can be measured. And then you capture some of that value. But there's some value left over, right? So you've created value, you capture some of that value. And then the organization that you're selling to or the person that you're selling to also has value. And it's a mutually beneficial exchange. And that's why a lot of the VC like dollars will go into that, because that is a much easier proposition to sort of think about. But at the same time, it's not necessarily not as valuable to do the other thing, right? Like, one side of the coin of humanity is like efficiency and productivity. But then there's the whole other side of like, okay, if we're having sort of wealth gains through productivity and just more humans, we have excess things. People have human natures, which are like, we live in a society. We need to have community. There seems to be some human nature about competitiveness and showing off and da, 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 da. And how do you satisfy those needs, which are massive? Like, the richest man in the world, it's not Elon or someone who's, who's done these incredible things. It's like Bernard Arnault, right? The guy who owns LVMH. Well, it probably fluctuates, but at least was at some point. But but his contribution to humanity is very difficult to capture in that sort of like, dollar value of wealth created. But he's obviously solving something, and he's solving these sort of societal, very difficult to capture problem, which is, how do you do competition? How do you have status in the modern world, right? And that is equally a very difficult challenge to solve. But if you can solve it, I think it's really, really, really useful. And if you can improve on it, it's really, really useful.
Well, yes. I mean, it makes you think, as efficient as some people may want the human race to be. This is getting very deep.
Philosophy. It always ends up here. Yeah.
Haven't even been drinking.
Yeah.
It makes me think, 9 to 5 or for many people longer or shorter, whatever it is, there's a space in the day where you are contributing to society in your own special way. And then you come back home and you need time to rest. And how do you rest? You do things like you watch TV, you listen to music, you go to the pub and you talk to people. And all of these things are a form of entertainment, an absolutely fundamental aspect of human life, and something that is probably just as important as food and water in my eyes. And, and this is, I think, where products like the pin that Canvas is making can be viewed almost, in some ways equally as important as a supermarket, because it is a necessity. We need community, we need entertainment, we need those things to really exist to the best of our capacity. If we're talking about efficiency, making somebody work all day, every day is going to just result in burnout. And that's not efficient whatsoever. So yes, products like yours, I think it takes somebody to see how important that is. We're devaluing art day by day. We can access almost everything for very little money these days. Spotify, for example, even has a free account version. You can pay for Netflix for, what is it, like 15 quid, something like that now, to access hundreds of thousands of shows, which you'll barely watch even a percentage of those. But these things are so important, and we devalue them so often. And I think that's, where I really hope that the product that you are bringing will be viewed for, how important that is for creating entertainment, creating community, and also creating identity as well. So I wish you all the very best with the pin. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Is there anything else that you feel like we should know about you or Canvas, or if anybody wants to get in touch?
Yeah, follow us on Twitter, or on X, I should say, at Canvas _DNT. We have a bunch of exciting things coming up, so stay tuned. And we look forward to getting that vision that we talked about, making it a reality. And so, thank you very much for having me on. And hopefully once things are out, I can come back and sort of like have more interesting stories about everything that went wrong and hopefully everything that's going right. And yeah, thank you very much.
For sure. Part 2 will be a show and tell. I'm looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it as well.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to Paving the Way. This has been Victor Gurr and Nikhil Rikhye talking about Canvas and the pin that they are developing to showcase your NFTs. Absolutely fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for tuning in.